Keith Pompey from the Inquirer is set to join us. He was in the bubble the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
I wonder how that was.
I got to
Like,
imagine.
you know how the team plays ping pong together? Do the media
Yeah.
guys get to play a little ping pong together and all that action?
I would imagine Keith is probably pretty happy to get out of that bubble. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. He joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline as I know the Sixers went home early, and that has caused a big stir, Keith. But how was it down there in that bubble?
Let me tell you what, bro. It was like the first time I stepped in Morgantown. I was like, where am I at? It was that bad. I saw people walking with WVU shirts on. I just couldn't. I was so happy to leave. It's like, I'm only playing.
Oh, man. That was good. That was good. I'll give you a couple points for that. All right, so a lot has happened since you've gotten home already. In the 3 days since they've been eliminated, the coach has been fired. Elton Brand speaks today. I guess the biggest takeaway I take from Brand today is he said, we've had a collaborative effort that did not work. I mean, is he essentially saying he didn't have solo power, that there were a lot of hands in the cookie jar here?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And like Mike, I think a lot of us, we forgot about that. Because remember, like, when Elton got the job, and I love Elton. Elton's a great guy. But when he got the job, you know, he was a G League general manager. And then they had, like, David Griffin, you know, from who won a championship with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He didn't get the job because they wanted a collaborative effort. But what happens is Elton got the credit, but then he also got the blame. You know what I mean? Everybody blamed him because he was the GM. And I always kept telling people, like, we got to realize, man, Elton isn't the only one making these moves. Now, we're going to praise him. We're also going to criticize him, but keep your eyes open and realize that he's not the only one. And he stressed that today. But he also tried to make it seem like I have more power now. He wouldn't say when it started.
Yeah.
But he said he has more power. Yeah.
Right. It was almost like, okay, I mean, did Elton I missed the first couple of minutes of the call. Did he come out and say it was his decision to fire Brett, or was that a collaborative effort?
He didn't say.
So do we think that was Elton, or do we think that was collaborative?
I think that was the ownership. I think it was the ownership group. I mean, again, I shouldn't put that in anyone's. I shouldn't just come out and say it. But see, here's the thing. Like, ultimately, when you have this type of an organization, the ownership group are the ones who gave Brett the 3-year, $15 million contract, right? He has $10 million left on his deal. I don't think Elton and them, the owner may say, okay, you can go do it now. But I don't think Elton has enough juice to just go in there and say, hey, you're fired. Elton's the owner's cool with it, because he just doesn't have that juice right now. I mean, we're talking about $10 million that the ownership group is going to be on the hook for.
Right.
So, but I believe me, Elton's not making that call.
Right. The only, I guess, would be if Elton said, look, I know this team can work if we get a different coach. I mean, because the roster looks like a mess, but if he goes in there and says, hey, I know it can work, just let me hire a guy who it could work with.
Yeah, but I also think that let me get a guy I could work with. But here's the thing that the Sixers have to do right now. When you talk, Elton was talking in code words, right? He was saying, well, we're going to figure out some things. Like, basically, they're going to restructure the front office. They're evaluating talent. So I think that right now, when you do stuff, you got to find out who's going to be in the front office. Unless Elton's going to be the alpha dog, unless Elton's going to be the boss. But I think that right now they're going to try to bring some people in and then possibly go out and get a coach, right? And then also, it's like when someone's saying something like that, like, we're trying to evaluate people. Let's just say if you're trying to evaluate Ned Cohen, Alex Rucker, people like that. Well, they're not going to be able to make the decision to fire the coach if you're unsure about that guy. You know what I mean? I think it's the ownership, and then also, they want to go out there and get a coach, but Brett Brown wasn't the only problem that the 76ers had. I mean, I think they relied too much on the analytics. I feel like that the pieces didn't fit. So Elton can say, let's go out there and get the coach I want. But until you correct everything else, like, you have the right front office personnel in there, then I don't think it's going to work out, no matter what you do, who the coach is.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think that moving on from some of these front office people and hiring a new coach is enough? And if it's not, is the Al Horford contract even movable?
I don't think it is movable. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think it is. I mean, because look at it. Like, you got Al Horford. I mean, someone may take it, like a team may tank. They may do what the Sixers did back in the day when Hinkie was, like, pulling in, like, bad contracts because he knew he was going to tank. And they needed to eat up some money on the salary cap. You know what I mean? They had to get to a threshold. Mm-hmm. So I can understand that. But if you're a team and you're trying to contend and you look at Al Horford, and nothing against him. He's a good center. He's a good center. He's not as good as he used to be, but he signed a 4-year, $97 million contract guaranteed. It's 109 overall, but 97 guaranteed. You got 3 years left. Al Horford is 34 years old. So when I think of that, I don't really think there's a lot of contending teams saying I need to go get Al Horford right now. I don't see that. And Tobias Harris, like some people may like him, but some people may also be scared of that number. You know what I mean? So when we talk about these two guys, you're saying to yourself, like, wow, that's why the Sixers have to think long and hard about this front office because they made a lot of bad decisions.
Let's say they do move on from Tobias. Like they're trying to move on from one of these contracts, obviously. I just don't know what that gets done if Al Horford is still in play because, at least in theory, Tobias Harris works with Joel Embiid on the floor. He can play that stretch 4 position or the 3 position as well. It just seems I get that Tobias was underwhelming, but if you're stuck with Al Horford, that's the bigger issue here.
You're right. Is the bigger issue? I mean, not just like when you look at it financially, like you say, we're talking about spacing, right? The spacing thing is an issue, but the fact that Al Horford made $28 million this year and he's going to make $27.5, I believe, next year, that's a huge problem. I mean, just because when you look at it, I'm just going to use the LA Lakers for an example. LeBron he's a max contract guy. So is Anthony Davis, right? These are like primetime players. But then you look at the centers, JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Two serviceable guys. Dwight Howard's a former All-Star. They're both making like the NBA minimum, like for you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And that's what most starting centers or most backups definitely make in the league. Where Al Horford made $28 million as the backup center and the part-time starting power forward.
Right.
So that's where the problem is. And like you say, so yeah, if I'm going to get rid of someone, that's the one that you need to get rid of. The problem is most people around the league realize that and are saying, well, hold up. Boston didn't miss a beat. They got a 6'8" guy that they're paying $5 million. And the Sixers are paying the backup dude $28. You know what I mean? So that's a hard contract to dump, man.
Yeah,
it's really hard to dump.
It seemed, Keith, like the Sixers built this team to try to weaken other teams. Like they get Horford because they thought he could defend Antetokounmpo, and they get Horford because he defended Embiid, rather than building a roster that made sense. It seemed like they tried to weaken their opponents or to match up with, you know what I mean? Like it just seemed like there was no rhyme or reason. So I guess the question would really be like, hopefully that wasn't Elton's vision, but if it was, and he's saying, look, this can work, then I don't know that you even trust him moving forward.
Yeah, that's bad. But again, I don't think it's all Elton.
Okay.
Like, I know he was saying the collaborative stuff. I know he was saying it's not right now, but I don't think it was all Elton. You know what I mean? Or, yeah. You know what? Or let's keep it this way. If Elton is safe and other people aren't, it sounds like to me maybe Elton was the one saying, hey, fellas, I don't know about this.
Right.
And they did it anyway. And the owners are like, hey, Elton, you were right all the time, So, yeah. But yeah, it was a bad thing, man. Everything was based on analytics, on how people match up, like you said. It was fantasy basketball at its worst.
Obviously, moving forward, there was a lot of criticism. I mean, Bruce Bowen just laid into Embiid We had Legler on the show last week. He kind of questioned Embiid, the accountability. Bobby Marks yesterday was on with us. He laid into Embiid and the accountability. When's he going to grow up? Today, Elton was asked about splitting them up. He said no. Is it time to start thinking about splitting those guys up? I know everybody says, no, can't do it. But is it really time to start considering it?
I don't think so. And here's my reasoning. Because 2 years ago, when they had Ersan Ilyasova, Marco Bellinelli, J.J. Redick, they were like, wow, they play well together because they had shooters. And then, last year you start gearing the roster solely towards Embiid with Jimmy and J.J. Redick, right? And then this year, you don't have that. You're trying to, help out Simmons. But it's like you don't have the shooters. They do not have the spacing. I mean, think about it. Like Ben wasn't a good shooter 2 years ago, and people sagged off of him. I get that. But it was like they had shooters around them. And they rolled off 16 consecutive wins. Now, you could say that team lacked defense. Guys were a little, soft. But at the same time, they had the shooters. And I think if the Sixers can get the shooters, they'll be better off. Now, again, when people criticize Embiid, they criticize Embiid about his work ethic and stuff like that. So that's something that he has to, man up with, something that he has to get better at. You know what I mean? And if he could do that, it'll work out. But again, I think it's kind of like, Mike, do you have any kids?
My girlfriend has a pair.
So your girlfriend has a pair. So let me ask you this. So your girlfriend, the kids are little, they come in the house, they start walking on the furniture, they start doing something, acting up a fool or doing whatever. And I don't mean to call them a fool, so right. I want your girlfriend cursing me out. But they acting up. And then all of a sudden your girlfriend's like, no, stop. And they stop. They know what right from wrong. Well, if you're Joel Embiid and you're saying man, look, I can eat cheeseburgers before the game. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to work out. I don't have to practice, this and that. Well, after a while, it's easy to blame him, but then you got to look in the mirror and start blaming other people. Like, why did you allow this? Because from day one, if you stop stuff like that from day one and you start suspending people and doing this and that, they're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But once you allow them to do stuff, and now we're in year 3 or year 4 of him actually playing on the floor, it's kind of hard to rein someone in because they don't respect you anymore.
Is there a coach or a couple coaches out there that intrigue you more than others that might be able to handle this situation?
I think I like Ty Lue, and I know some people are like, no, we don't want LeBron's former coach, right? But the reason why I like Ty Lue is because I think the modern day player has the utmost respect for him. They respect him. Like he wasn't, he was an NBA player. He wasn't like an all-star or anything like that. But he won 2 rings as a player. He won back-to-back. And he beat the Sixers in one of those years, right? And then as a coach, he went to Cleveland. Yes, he had LeBron. He was an assistant. Then they made him the head coach. And that year he won the championship. So, I think that a guy like Ty Lue has the cachet to where he's a guy that Ben Simmons, of course, loves him. But then Embiid will say, well, you know what? This guy won as a player and as a coach. So when he tells me something, he knows it. Like he's experienced it. So I think Ty Lue is a good coach. Jay Wright, a lot of people talk about him. Some people think that, he's a great coach, USA basketball. I remember Jerry Colangelo used to always praise him, just talk about what a great coach he was. So I think that, his future is bright, and maybe he could be someone that the Sixers are going to go after. Out west, people are saying, they're wondering if Mike Brown would get an interview. I don't know if he would be a great pick for the Sixers, but some people are, wondering if he'll get one. But if you want to say right now, to me, if I had to have a front runner, in my opinion, it would be Ty Lue, just because I feel like, he's someone that Ben Simmons and Joel can respect. And I think that when he says stuff, they'll listen just because of he's been there as a player and a coach.
Keith Pompey from the Inquirer. We'll leave you with this. You know, you asked Brett the other night about did he ever get really the best of him, and he said no. You said, can you elaborate? He said no, but thank you for the question. What did you read from that message there?
I read that he knows that he was in a tough spot, and he didn't want to come out and kill anyone. Now a couple of my boys are like, "Yo, man, he dissed you." I'm like, "No, he didn't." Right? But I read it like he was like he knows that he always had injuries. You know, as he noted in his farewell letter, he had 109 players, right? And he feels as if that it wasn't an even playing field. You know, like he's being judged by the Budenholzers, the Brad Stevens, and this and that. And if you look at it, for the most part, their roster was consistent. You know, they weren't always picking up different players at the trade deadline. You know, they weren't trading people. They weren't waiving people. They weren't acquiring the guys from the buyout. You know, and it's like with Brett, you always had to start over and over again. And to me, maybe I'm reading in too much, but to me, I think that's what he meant. You know, like, you know the situation, you know the things I've been through.
Well, it'll be interesting offseason, that's for sure. Whenever this offseason takes place and whenever next season starts, it'll be sure interesting to keep an eye on it. Keith Pompey, always kind enough. You know what is consistent? Morgantown's better than Pittsburgh, my friend.
Man, you know, I was trying to wait for you to shut up so I could say, hell the Pit, hell the Pit, hell the Pit. And I don't mean shut up, I'm sorry, but you know.
I hope to see you soon, man. I hope to see you soon.
I know. You know what's funny? Down here, like, it comes to a point in time. Remember before you say, hey, man, I like your hat or I like your sneakers. Now we're going around telling people, hey, man, I love your mask.
Yeah.
Nice mask. So it's a different time.
I'm rocking
All
one
right,
of those
fellas,
summer of 76 masks. Keith, appreciate it, man. All right, Sports Bash Live. He, like all guests, appear via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.